Hello and welcome back to Green Money Momentum. I'm your host, Trevor, and today we're going to be talking all about the stock SoundHound AI. And this is a big week for SoundHound as they're going to be having their earnings on Thursday. So today we're going to be doing a technical and fundamental analysis of this company, and we're going to project where they may go after earnings. And so if you don't know what SoundHound AI is, this is one of my favorite stocks that I've talked about on this channel. We can see at the tail end of last year, in November to December, there was a massive rise in this stock. We went from being valued all the way from around $4 the first time we ever talked about this stock to all the way up to $24. So there was some massive gains in this stock. Ourselves, we had a big profit. I'll pull it up here on screen, not to brag, but this was an amazing opportunity. Our SoundHound calls gained 1,200% in value. So at one point with SoundHound, we were up by 1,200%. An absolutely incredible return on investment. Thankfully, we did sell some of those options contracts while they were at the top. But during that time, there was some fear, uncertainty, and doubt by NVIDIA as it was announced that they had sold some shares in SoundHound. And so because of that, there was a major retraction in the stock. We saw ourselves go back down to being around $14 to $15. The stock did hold steady there for a bit, but then there was an even more massive drop off. Now, recently with the markets, there has been a lot of macroeconomic trends that have hurt all stocks altogether. So with SoundHound, first the news that NVIDIA was no longer investing with them, and then just overall trends in the market, the stock got beaten up pretty bad. So we fell all the way from 24 all the way back to 7, but recently in the short term, we have seen a bit of a recovery in the stock. So we are now back to $9. And again, the big announcement with their quarter earnings is going to be coming this Thursday. And so with SoundHound, the way this stock has moved historically, going back to the technical analysis for just a second, during this time when SoundHound had its massive rise, there was some really good announcements. There was the good news about them working with one vendor, Torchy's Tacos, and then also their earnings reports killed it. So with their positive earnings and then the good news of that, they did gain a lot of value and momentum. And when we just look at the history of SoundHound AI's earnings, that's exactly what the trend has been. So just like the stock gaining value, each and every single quarter, we could see SoundHound's revenue going up. So with the last quarter, they had a 34.54 million revenue. And when we compare it to just 2 years before that, in 2022, we could see that their revenue was just at 9 million. So a massive jump when it comes to revenue. And then historically, when it comes to earnings, they have been pretty consistent. So they have hit most of their earnings that were set out by Wall Street. So let's see if they could get this next earnings, which is set to be at 30.38 million. That's the estimate by Wall Street with a negative earnings per share. So when we look at revenue, the last quarter, they had 34 million. So this is a very possible hit by SoundHound. And so SoundHound is making a bunch of money from the contracts with all the different restaurants and big tech providers that they are working with. So if you're not sure about what SoundHound does, what they are, again, they are AI technology and they are focused all on voice. So they're very helpful and they work with businesses all across the board. So we could see here just on the detailed breakdown of who they work with a bunch of automotive companies. So the sound voice technology that you're hearing in your Mercedes-Benz, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, and others is coming from SoundHound. Also, they are working with a bunch of restaurants, White Castle, Chipotle, Applebee's, Jersey Mike's Subs. We talked about last year they had started working with Torchy's Tacos, and then also with a bunch of technology providers as well. So overall, SoundHound has a lot of value, a lot of real, true intrinsic value with who they are working with, and their revenues look fantastic. But not only do their revenues look great, so does their long-term debt. As we can see that in 2024, they paid down that debt. So back down to zero, which is huge because with a lot of these small market cap volatile stocks that that we talk about, a lot of the time these companies have a lot of debt. So like, for example, another company we talk about, Big Bear AI, they have a lot of debt, which could hold the stock back down a little bit, just because of course when you're under debt, it does put some financial constraints on the company. And so with SoundHound, they've had some pretty big debt in the past, but we can see in 2024 they made some really significant progress with bringing down that debt. And so now just looking at the bearish case, because that's all bullish. When we look at the revenue, that looks great. And when we look at their long-term debt, that looks fantastic as well. So I am a bull on SoundHound. Everything checks out to me as a great company, and a company I see continuing to gain more intrinsic value, especially as the years go on. We know how valuable AI is in the current economy we live in, and how there is a big chase to AI. So SoundHound has their feet dug into the mud there pretty well, but not everybody believes in SoundHound. So I am a bull on SoundHound, but there is a massive short interest on SoundHound. So at 29%, a lot of shorts have piled into SoundHound. If you don't know what short interest is, anytime you have a calculation in the double digits, so anytime you get above 7, 8, 9, and then to 10, 11, 12%, that is absolutely massive short interest. So that means a ton of short interests have compiled into the stock. And again, it could be off some of the bad news that was perceived. So the bad news that was originally perceived in January was when we discovered that NVIDIA was no longer working with SoundHound, but it actually wasn't that big of a deal as well, because we learned that it was just SoundHound working with NVIDIA for a chip when it comes to driving technology. So the chips, the SoundHound worked with NVIDIA for the chips into cars. Again, with a lot of the providers that we're talking about, they're working with the whole automotive industry. And so that news wasn't as bad as was originally perceived. Everybody freaked out about NVIDIA. It was just a small portion of shares they had. They made a profit. They worked together. All was positive. But the bears really ate that up. And again, when we just returned to the technical analysis, the stock got eaten up as well. But now when we just look at the technical analysis, where we're at point right now in current date of time, the stock again down more than 60% from the highs, all the way from 24 down to 9. So a big drop off and a big opportunity for any traders who are looking to get into a potential recovery. When we look at the MACD, things are pretty in the middle there. So a lot of room to run on the MACD. And then the RSI is right at 51 as well. So kind of a 50-50 shot there. It really is going to depend on what SoundHound says with their earnings. So their earnings again coming up Thursday. If they have a beat, that is going to be super positive. And again, with earnings, what we're always looking to also is their future guidance. And so SoundHound, hopefully their future guidance continues to look great. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't, because again, since 2022, this company has been growing significantly with a massive revenue and with their debts paid off. When looking at an investment, it wouldn't be fair if I just showed you the bull case and then showed you how there's so many shorts, making it look like the shorts are crazy. There is a reason why many investors are shorting SoundHound as well. Again, myself, I am bullish. So actually, just this last week, I bought a few options contracts in anticipation for what I believe is going to be a great earnings. But so not just the NVIDIA announcement. Now, that was the mass announcement that many saw. But when we look in the further back end, many bears may believe that there may be some possible dilution coming with SoundHound in the future. So in January, SoundHound did file to potentially offer up to $500 million in a mix of securities. That would include common stock, preferred stock, and convertible debt. While this filing doesn't guarantee immediate issuance, it provides the company with the flexibility to raise capital as needed, which could dilute existing shareholders' equity. So basically, what that's saying, if you're not completely familiar with what all those big words mean, is just that SoundHound does have the potential to release more financial, more stock basically into the market. So that could be convertible debt notes, that could be common stock. And with the common stock, a good way to look at it is if like you had a bucket of marbles, right? And say you had 10 marbles. Each one of those marbles would have some type of worth, especially if you had a bunch of buyers. You know, if those buyers knew there was a bunch of other buyers and the commodity of those marbles weren't high, you know, those investors may be, or those buyers may be willing to pay, say, 50 cents per marble, maybe even $1 per marble, depending on how hot those marbles are. But if all of a sudden you take 10 more marbles, that 10 marbles that was initially in there does get diluted. And the more marbles you add, the less valuable each marble becomes, as there's more marbles in circulation. And so SoundHound isn't out of the question, as actually SoundHound has diluted shares outstanding by approximately 51%. This was at the end of 2024, and this increase was driven by the stock-based acquisitions and at the market offerings. And so the ongoing capital needs, the company has been burning cash at an accelerating rate, 75.8 million over the last 3 quarters, raising concerns that it may need to issue more shares to fund operations and grow initiatives. And so when it comes to the markets, there is one factor that I think sucks more than anything else, and that is dilution. Because you may perfectly believe in a play, everything you have with a technical and fundamental analysis may be correct. You may say, wow, the balance sheet looks fantastic. Wow, they have all these different companies. Wow, this is groundbreaking technology. This is really going to change the world. But if that company does decide to dilute as an investor, a lot of the times this just means that you're going to be dumped on. And now with dilution also, many of the times these companies will dilute, again, as this says here, for capital needs. But what is positive, again, when we just go to revenue, SoundHound doesn't look like they're going to need to dilute if their revenues continue to grow. Again, when we look at 2022 to now, there has been a massive increase in revenue. And so dilution in the past, yeah, needed for some capital, right? But going forward, this company is out of debt. That is huge. That means that when it comes to any positions of constraint, if the markets in general start to have a constraint, if the economy starts to constrain, this company will fare a lot better than many, as they don't have that burden of that debt. So overall, myself, I am very bullish on SoundHound. Again, I think the original stock drop off from January was set off just by a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt with the NVIDIA, leaving their investment with SoundHound, and then just overall macroeconomic trends. So I think that SoundHound is going to have an awesome earnings, and I am waiting in anticipation for this Thursday. But I would be curious to hear what everyone else has to say. So please let me know what you think of SoundHound in the comments section below. Also, like I mentioned earlier, with this SoundHound contract right here, this is an options contract I had, and man, what an insane profit that was. And so I absolutely love options contracts. I think they are the greatest financial instrument ever created. If you want to learn more about options contracts, I am thinking about making a video in the future on that. So if you're interested, also please drop in the comment section, say something along the lines of, I want to learn about options contracts. Also, please leave a like and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next video.